Hello and welcome to the Eide Tax News and Views podcast, exploring current tax topics of interest and providing tax insight to help you make an informed decision. During this session, you will learn more about the Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program with Mike Criddle, a partner, and Jared Johnson, a senior manager, who are both members of our international tax team and support our international clients. Mike, I know recently the IRS announced it will discontinue the Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program. Can you tell us why it is important for U.S. citizens and green card holders to disclose income from foreign accounts?
Well, I think that's a great question, Kate. An interesting thing about the United States, they're one of the few countries that tax U.S. citizens, green card holders, and U.S. tax residents on their worldwide income. As such, the U.S. Requires that all income from all sources anywhere in the world be reported on a U.S. person's tax return. Because it's difficult for the U.S. Due to jurisdictional issues to find out about income from offshore or non-U.S. accounts, they require informational disclosures of those foreign accounts. So it has been a long time requirement by the U.S. that U.S. persons report the existence of their foreign accounts and report the income associated with those foreign or non-U.S. accounts.
So now, Jared, clearly there's some people who choose not to report their foreign income. As such, they're probably penalized for that. What do some of those penalties look like?
The penalties that the IRS can impose, they really started back in the early 2000s. The Department of Treasury noticed there was a lot of non-compliance with these disclosure forms. So they allowed the IRS to enforce them, at which time the IRS implemented some civil penalties associated with failure to file these informational returns, as well as sometimes criminal penalties. That seems pretty harsh, and the reason why these laws were created, though, in order to keep this in mind, is because the U.S. wants to know about U.S. persons having assets overseas in order to eliminate or minimize financial crimes such as tax evasion or money laundering, support of terrorism, those types of things. And so as part of the Bank Secrecy Act, they enforced these reporting requirements, and they put teeth in the laws to enforce them because there was so much non-compliance. Some examples of the penalties, you can see how stiff they are, just the civil penalties, leaving out the criminal penalties. The civil penalties can be, at the minimum, for failure to file a foreign bank account form would be $10,000 per disclosure. So per account, per year that was not disclosed, they could come in and assess you a $10,000 penalty, to the point where they wipe out your entire bank account in that foreign country. If the IRS feels that there's evidence of willfulness going on, then the IRS can actually come in and assess a stiffer penalty, which is the greater of $100,000 or 50% in the amount of the account which was not reported. So you can see that the IRS has really put a lot of teeth in these laws.
So compliance sounds really important, especially when there's a lot of dollars at stake. Mike, we'll bring it back to you. What are some of the steps, or how do taxpayers come into compliance as it relates to their offshore accounts?
Well, first and foremost, it has to do with disclosing the existence of non-U.S. accounts where you haven't disclosed them in the past. To the extent that there isn't any unreported income, so if you have these non-U.S. accounts, but they're non-interest-bearing accounts, for example, and so there's no unreported income, or if the person realized that they had to pick up the income but didn't realize they had to disclose the accounts, you can become compliant simply by filing the delinquent reports. It's often referred to as a quiet disclosure, and that's one method. But if there's unreported income, even a few dollars of unreported income, the IRS has indicated that a quiet disclosure won't work, they'll still assess penalties for failure to file informational reports related to a non-U.S. bank account. So in those cases, U.S. persons are kind of left with using what currently is in place that the IRS refers to as the Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program. So it's a program that's in existence right now that enables U.S. taxpayers to come forward voluntarily and to disclose the existence of their foreign accounts through a formal program. And they have a willful program and a non-willful program. And the non-willful program is commonly referred to as the streamlined program. The willful program, which is the full Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program within the overall voluntary disclosure program, is actually phasing out. And so it's only available for about 6 more months, so that if there are U.S. persons who willfully failed to disclose their foreign accounts, they have a limited time in order to come forward and voluntarily disclose. For those who are non-willful, the streamlined program isn't ending, but certainly we would recommend that they come forward sooner rather than later, as similar to the other program, the streamlined program could end at any time. And so, there is some effort and time involved in getting all the documentation together to participate in a voluntary disclosure program to report these unreported non-U.S. accounts. And so, starting sooner rather than later is certainly preferable, given the program could potentially end.
Is there anything else that either one of you think it would be important for listeners to know in relationship to the Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program?
Yeah, I feel like it's important. With this announcement the IRS brought out, it sounds like it's an end to all of the amnesty programs for people that have these delinquent international informational forms, and that's just not true. It's like Mike had mentioned earlier, it's just that specific program, the Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program. The streamlined programs are still available. They're very popular with the IRS. We don't know how long the streamlined programs will be around, but they could, the IRS could close those programs as well. The other question Kate, that I get a lot from clients is, well, how would the IRS ever know about these foreign accounts? A lot of people reach out to me because they know I do this type of work, and they'll say, hey, I have this bank account in such and such country, and I just got a letter from the bank telling me that they're going to disclose my account information to the U.S. government. If I haven't been reporting, you should talk to a U.S. tax professional. These letters are happening more and more, and they are being sent out from these foreign financial institutions to people that they identify as being U.S. persons. And the reason they're doing that is because the U.S. has implemented a law called FATCA, and is now in force. And so more and more of these banks, in order to be compliant and to do banking business in the U.S., are identifying these U.S. persons who have accounts in their bank, and they're now exchanging that information or sending that information to the U.S. government. And so it's a matter of time before the IRS starts sending out letters to people who are not in compliance with reporting these accounts.
And to that point, thank you, Jared, the likelihood of the U.S. Becoming aware of unreported accounts, that likelihood is increasing all the time. We will eventually get to a point in time where the U.S. is aware of the non-U.S. accounts that U.S. persons have, and will be able to pretty readily identify who's not reporting. And so I think that it's important to take advantage of this window to voluntarily disclose, so that it doesn't come up in an audit, with a notice attached where there is no opportunity to voluntarily disclose, and you're subject to whatever penalties the IRS wishes to assess.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and for serving as a resource, Mike and Jared. It was great to talk to you. Please visit eidbailey.com or contact Mike Criddle or Jared Johnson with questions or comments about this session. If you have a topic you'd like us to discuss during a future recording, please email nationaltaxoffice@eidbailey.com. We look forward to hearing from you.